What is up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of FittBite, the mini-series on the Fittdesign podcast, where we take bite-sized pieces of the Fittdesign content you love and provide easy-to-understand, bite-sized 5 to 7 minute episodes on all of the topics that we discuss in our regular channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at the Ultimate Labels Guide. We'll be running you through the key pieces of information and content to include in each label, as well as running you through the many different styles of labels that you can incorporate. By the end of this episode, you'll walk away with a much better understanding of what a care/brand label is, what information it should include, and ultimately how to customize a label so that it fits your brand's positioning to give you the edge in a competitive market. A care/brand label is a piece of trim that draws a customer's attention to the garment by describing what the product is and how to care for it. There are many different garment labels out there, and the information that one can include on a care label differs from brand to brand. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to you and your brand positioning to decide on what brand label is right for your products and what key pieces of information that you'll want to include. In this FittBite, we're going to be providing you with standardized information that you'll want to consider. When it comes to a care and brand label, you'll always want to start off with your brand label or your brand name. This can be an icon and a word mark that clearly identifies the name of your company and a logo that can provide a brand hit. Think of Nike. Nike has the swoosh and they have their word mark. They usually tend to include both of those imagery on the same label. Next, we'll look at the size indicator. The size indicator is an interesting one, and you can include traditional sizes like M, S, L, XL, or you can even include the actual words that associate with each of these letters: medium, large, extra large, so on and so forth. Depending on the market that you're in, you may want to include specific types of label identifiers. For example, if you're operating in a UK market, you may want to use the numerical sizing system. If you're operating in multiple markets, you can have a grid that shows the conversion on the label between the different sizes. For example, a US small can end up being a European large, as well as a UK 4 can be a US 6, so on and so forth. Next down the line is our composition information. This is probably one of the most important pieces of info to include on a care label. Composition information must indicate the content of each piece of body fabric on a garment. For example, if your performance t-shirt has a main body fabric and an accent mesh panel, you want to include both of those fiber contents. You may start off with the more dominant fabric, which could be considered the main fabric. When it comes to outlining the fibers, start off with the ingredient profile that has the larger percentage of the composition. So if we have a cotton polyester spandex blend at a 63% cotton, 32% polyester, and 5% spandex blend, you'll want to start off with cotton, then go to polyester, and then lastly spandex. It's also extremely important to include the country of origin. Some brands choose to also include where the product was designed. This is totally up to you. Next, you'll want to look at care instructions. Care instructions should be written in sequence to coincide with the garment's washing procedure. So make sure to include universal symbols so that regardless of where the garment is sold, these can be understood. The last thing you want is an angry customer who's washed your garments incorrectly and is blaming you for a defect. If you have any special information, such as recycled fibers or organic fibers, you could include them at the end of the care label. And please make sure to meet requirements. Different countries have different requirements for care labels. It's a very important factor that should not be overlooked. On that topic, an example of very stringent laws regarding care labels are in the United States. In the US, metallic threads are not allowed to be used on any part of the label for anything that includes the country of origin, the fiber content, care instructions, and, if necessary, the importer's identification numbers. This is because these key pieces of information need to be extremely legible and easy to read. Now that we've looked at the key pieces of information to include on every care label, let's look at the different styles of label. Do bear in mind that you can have a care label and a brand label combined in one, and you can have a care label and a brand label separated. So these styles of labels will apply to both or combined. However, if you have a care label and a brand label, chances are you'll want to go for a label piece that can provide you with more space to write more information. We'll start off with the most traditional label that exists, which is a Manhattan fold. This is a very simple type of label that is commonly used, and it involves a center folded damask or other type of material label that's also folded at the top and stitched all the way around. Next, we have a straight cut with a no fold. This is probably one of the most no frills labels that exists. It's very easy and it's cost efficient, but usually we reserve this for only brand labels. If we want to go for the next variation of the straight cut no fold, we have an ends fold with a top stitch all around. This can be a very polished way to elevate the same straight cut no fold design and use it for more luxurious and high-end wear. One of the best options for care/brand labels is a center folded damask label. This is what you typically see above the left hip of a t-shirt. This is usually reserved for brand and care labels because it has two sides. You can include the brand and sizing label on one side, and then the washing instructions and any other special information on the other side. We'll also consider one of the more fancy and extravagant labels, otherwise known as the miter fold. The miter fold is quite similar to an ends fold label, and it looks like an upside down N. It features the same damask style label with a 45-degree chamfer on either side, creating a vertical input to attach the label directly to the neckline. This is a great way to bring in some luxury and flair to your product. A miter fold is great for brands that require an elevated look. When it comes to sportswear, a lot of customers opt for garments with heat transfer labels. If you can imagine the consensus of sportswear, we're dealing with quite compressive fabrics and tight fits. With such a fit, you want to make sure that you don't have any pieces of fabric rubbing up against the skin that can cause irritation. At the same time, a heat transfer label provides a low profile, minimally invasive way to include key pieces of information onto your garments without the added bulk. Lastly, for you DIYers out there, a simple solution to incorporating a brand label onto your garments is to go for a hand-stitched label. This is simply a straight cut damask label with an all-around perimeter stitch. Regardless of what style of label you choose, make sure to choose the one that best fits your brand's personality and one that will get your functionality requirements across. With so many options out there, it can be quite confusing. Hopefully, this FittBite has given you the necessary information you need to go out there and create beautiful things. You've just listened to this episode of FittBite, where we covered the ultimate brand and care labels guide. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review below. It really informs us and keeps us motivated to keep pushing for new content. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and until next time, stay awesome.